today we're going to go over a product that we use for training self-defense in a manner that allows us to train at a higher intensity that keeps us as well as our training partners safe from injury, but still allows us to go through the motions and the techniques just in a safe manner. Now, going forward with all my product reviews, we're going to stick to two categories. Either one being over here where we focus on stuff that applies to us while we're actually training, that allows us to train in different types of situations or at higher intensities without hurting ourselves, or over here where we're focusing on products that you can actually use on the street to keep yourself safe. I'm strictly going to stick to stuff that I truly believe in that works in one of those two categories, and I'm not just going to kind of start going out there and buying products and testing them out and trying them and giving you reviews if I personally don't feel that it's worthwhile to either, again, use out on the street in a real situation or use in a scenario where you're actually practicing different techniques. So without further ado, let's get to today's product. Now, today's product is going to be MMA gloves. Now, these gloves come from a company called Combat Corner. They're based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Phenomenal company to work with. They come with tons of different gear for MMA fighters, Thai fighters, boxers, jiu-jitsu practitioners, wrestling, all that type of stuff encloses within what their company makes products for. Now, the gloves that we were going over were designed and made for them to use for their MMA fighters while training for fights. However, when it comes to self-defense, you have to be able to train at a certain intensity that allows you to go through specific scenarios and even specific techniques that you can then turn to use in a real situation if it ever came to it. But if you're not able to train at a higher intensity during your training with self-defense, your body and your mind are not going to know how to react sometimes in real situations, which is, again, going to hinder your ability to effectively protect yourself in a real situation. So to do that, you have to have the proper gear. Now, I've worked with a lot of different MMA type gloves in the past that I've tried and we've used through different academies and stuff, and I've always come kind of down to one problem. Yes, they allow your fingers to move freely, they allow your hands to move freely. I can grab things, whether it's my training partner's arms or legs or heads. I'm able to carry weapons and hold weapons as well as disarm and, whatever that sense is. The problem is that the padding itself and the support from them is always kind of bare minimum to where I'm either hesitant to do a full strike or hit a little bit harder with the chance of possibly hurting my training partner or even worse, hurting myself. Because again, if I injure myself, I'm now no longer able to train going forward. But again, also if I injure my partner, they can't train. So it's kind of a lose-lose situation in that sense. So the gloves that we're going to show you from Combat Corner, they do work phenomenally in MMA, and I can tell you that up front. I've seen a lot of people at my gym utilize those gloves in their MMA training. They're phenomenal gloves to train with. You can hit hard. You can take good hits from them. You can grab onto one another. You can still work all your grappling and your jiu-jitsu without any restraint or resistance from the glove itself. So it is phenomenal when it comes to that. And now, these gloves were designed for MMA and combat-based training in that sense. They were not designed for self-defense. So just let me put that out there. However, I love using these gloves in a self-defense manner because of the freedom that allows us to have, again, with maintaining grips and grabbing things and weapons and all that such. But more importantly, it allows us to train our self-defense in a high level of intensity without injuring ourselves or even remotely close to injuring ourselves to the extent to where we are no longer able to train. So the gloves themselves come in two different colors. You got the green, which I prefer, and you got their traditional black and red, which is based off of their logo's colors. Now, both of these gloves are phenomenal. They're the exact same gloves. Again, the only difference is the color. And let me tell you, these things are hot on the market right now because they are constantly going out of stock with how many people are ordering these. So if you ever are desiring one of these gloves, hop on the link below. Gives you a little bit of a discount, but snag these gloves before they're gone. Now, the glove itself, again, if depending, you know what, we're going to go with the green because I like the green better. But the glove itself is a phenomenal glove for multiple different reasons, and we're going to kind of break it down. So the first one is kind of just go over the overall protection of the glove, and we'll start with the wrist. So the wrist protection itself is nice. Now, I understand with like MMA and boxing, guys will wrap up their hands a little bit more. When I do the self-defense training, I very rarely, if ever, actually wrap my knuckles in my hands because, again, I'm not striking pads or anything in that sense where I'm worried about bending my wrist. But just for the extra support, this wrist support, one, it comes through a little bit of a loop here, so it's secured. It's not going to like slide up and off on the wrist and kind of come apart. So it is in place. It doesn't come apart at all, but it allows you to not only wrap it around once, but twice. And when it wraps around twice, trust me, it is nice and firm and sturdy on your wrist, but it's not resistant enough to where you can barely move your wrist. I still get full mobility and movement of my wrist, but it is extremely supportive. I never feel during any of the striking or movements, motions that we're doing, I never feel like my wrist is about to miss or jerk to one side where I'm worried about injuring it because it seems like it's extremely sturdy in there. On top of that, you also have a bit of a padding across the top here that adds a little bit of support. Depending on how big your hand is, the padding itself kind of falls generally right around the top of the wrist and the bottom of the hand right where they kind of interconnect, which again, most pads don't really carry padding there. They kind of stick to protecting the knuckles and the fingers. This protects the back of the hand right around here, which again is an extremely vulnerable spot. So if for whatever reason you make contact and your hand slips for whatever reason and you make contact with that wrist, you don't have to worry about injuring your wrist because again, it's protected there. Plus it's got the logo spit across the front. So gotta like that. Now, in regards to the padding on the top, just look at how thick this thing is. I mean, come on, this thing is a massively thick pad, extremely cushioned. And you can see as I'm sitting here squeezing it, it not only maintains its form pretty well, but it instantly comes back. And trust me, this is a lot thicker than any MMA pad that I've ever trained with in the past. A lot of them literally feel like you're hitting somebody with a rock or that you're punching somebody with a rock. And then when you get hit by it, it feels like the rock's hitting you in your face or your body and you don't want to move afterwards, which again, hinders your ability to train self-defense properly if you're too worried about the pain and the injuries that could result as a result of getting hit. And again, when we're training self-defense, we need to make sure that we're training at a high level intensity at times so that that can translate over to essentially preparing ourselves for the street. So the ability that this has to allow us to make harder contact to where you can kind of feel what it feels like to be in a real situation but without being hurt, this is a big bonus to Combat Corner for that. So shout out to you guys for that one. So the other thing to kind of keep in mind too, which is nice, is a little thumb pad here that again protects the outside of your thumb again in case it gets caught on anything or if it gets hit from the side, it also protects that. So they do a real nice job at making sure that all aspects of your hand, your fingers, your wrists are all covered with some sort of padding or restraint that allows it to, again, maintain its form and shape in place, but prevents it from getting injured, whether it's you making the contact or if something's making contact with your hand at the same time. So let's go ahead and put these things on for you real quick. So as you can see, another nice feature is it does have finger spots for all 5 of your fingers to go into. It's extremely secure. Not only do they have the individual slots, but it is then tied together essentially at the base so that your fingers aren't separating or splitting at any point. They're all together. Your fingers all move together. The pad moves down nice and easy as you're doing. Even, trust me, even like straight out of the bag, because like these ones are pretty new for us. We've only used these a handful of times and it's already got full mobility. So these things break in pretty quickly. But the nice thing is you get ones like this that we've had for a few months now and look at them. They still both look brand new, okay? The fact that this glove is able to maintain its shape and its form without really taking too much damage, and trust me, we put these through the ringer pretty well over here. The fact that this is still able to maintain its shape and form, again, props to Combat Corner for making such a quality product. But the other thing is, you know, a lot of times these gloves are extremely stiff when you take them out of the bag and you got to break them in. 1 day, 2 days tops of training with this and it was broken in just fine. Now, when we wrap it around again, just so you can see, it is nice and tight. I have full mobility, but trust me, it's supported 100%, and I'm not worried about, you know, even if my wrist bends here a little bit, this tight padding keeps my wrist from coming up. So again, it keeps everything in place without you having to worry about straining your wrist, which is a huge safety feature for all pads that you should have. But again, a lot of times pads expect you to wrap your hands on top of that, so they don't always focus 100% on the wrist support, thinking that, okay, I'm just going to wrap my hands and you don't have to worry about that. Combat Corner takes care of that for you. So even if you do wrap your hands and then you use this as well, it's just double protected, but honestly, I can get away without even having to use wrist wraps to begin with. So the other nice feature is this is how well it protects your fingers. Now, I understand that there still is a slight chance of eye gouging, you know, accidental eye gouging, of course, especially in self-defense where we're using a little bit more of like an open palm system. And if I'm reaching for something or if I'm grabbing, I'm worried about possibly getting a finger to my eye. But again, at the grand scheme of things, it doesn't allow you to open your hand. Like the more that I start flexing my hand open, you can see that it's starting to push my hands down a little bit. So it protects you from, you know, whereas other gloves, I can literally just straight to your eyes. But this one, it's a little bit harder to do that. Or if anything, this pad is going to make contact first, and then the fingers will just fold underneath, and you don't have to worry about that to begin with. But either way, the bigger feature with this is the fact that this comes over so far on the top that it protects these knuckles here, especially again when I make a fist. Look at this. If this is coming head on, most pads, a lot of times you can literally see like the knuckles kind of sticking out because the pads will cut off here. When I make my full fist, all you see is the pad. And then again, even when my thumb is tucked, it's protected on the side here with the pad as well. So there's really no risk of your fingers or knuckles getting jammed when you are making contact with it. As you can hear from this hitting, you can just hear just how thick and how sturdy this padding is, even if we're hitting pretty hard. And you can tell that it's not one that, like, I can hit pretty hard with this thing, and it absorbs it pretty damn well without collapsing, where again, with other pads, it sounds more like a rock. And trust me, like, this is how some of my other pads have sounded in the past. So picture getting hit by this over and over again when you're training self-defense compared to getting hit like this, okay? It's a lot softer, which again, for training purposes, is what you want. You want something that you will feel the impact and you're going to know, hey, I got hit, but it's not going to put me out. It's not going to prevent me from training further. It doesn't hurt me and it doesn't hurt my training partner. That's what you want in a glove. And again, these guys nailed it with this glove. So hats off to Combat Corner all around. Like, this is an absolutely phenomenal glove. Now, in regards to making grip, yes, these gloves, again, were designed for MMA. So it allows you to utilize jiu-jitsu-based techniques and wrestling-based and clinch-type work. Is it as easy to grab weapons if you're doing weapon-based training, whether it's firearms, knives? Yes and no. You can do it. It's definitely a little bit more difficult than the gloves that don't have as much resistance to that extent. Again, like this one, as I open my hand, it kind of pushes my hands back down, so it doesn't allow me freely to just open my hand. Like, as soon as I start doing this, you can feel the resistance pushing back down, so it makes it harder in that sense to do some of the weapon-based training. But again, it's not what these were designed for. I just use them for self-defense because I find them the most efficient gloves to utilize for self-defense training, other than that small little bit factor. But again, I'll sacrifice sometimes not being able to grab something fully or as efficiently right away. Like, if I grab, for instance, I can still grab a knife and I can hold on to it just as tight, but the ability to initially grab it or pull it out of my side or pull it out of your arm or whatever the case is might be a little bit more difficult with these gloves compared to other ones, but it still works in that sense. So don't worry too much about it on that end. But again, it's overall, is for like what the glove's purpose is, absolutely phenomenal. Now again, the gloves come in 2 colors. They come in multiple sizes. I've had no problems with anybody fitting in any of these. Again, I've had kids to adults wearing the gloves. It fits everyone just fine. Everyone finds them extremely effective. We've put these through plenty of tests with grappling-based situations, weapon-based situations, simply just striking situations, and no one's had any issues. No one's gotten any hurt, obviously. So, all around, these gloves work very well in that sense. Now, understand when we are doing situations where we're training self-defense, again, I emphasize this, if you're with people that train on a regular basis, that know how to train properly, and they're training self-defense around the clock or multiple days a week, they understand the risk of injury. They understand kind of how far they're able to push it, but they also know how to utilize control a little bit better than someone that's just kind of taking a self-defense course just to learn some self-defense. So if it's someone that's been around and knows how to do stuff, do you necessarily need one of these gloves? Yes and no. No, on the sense of you're going to understand how to use control, so you know how hard to hit and how hard not to hit, when to push the pace, when not to push the pace, and you're able to kind of still give those realistic training situations without always having the proper gear for it. But at the same time, why limit yourself when you can have the proper gear and push the limits even more, or consistently push the limits without having to back off and improve your training and your self-defense that much more? So again, I recommend that all martial arts gyms, as much as possible, whether again you're training for MMA or you're training for self-defense, pick up a pair of Combat Corner gloves and give them a shot with your students and see how much they like them. All my students utilize these gloves and they absolutely love them. Again, that's why they've all picked out a pair and they've pretty much ditched all their old pairs, and now we're all rocking the Combat Corner gloves. Now, even more importantly, for people that have never trained self-defense before, or that don't train self-defense as often, like maybe some law enforcement, maybe people that are doing like a women's self-defense class or a college self-defense class or something, if the instructor has gloves like this, giving them to people that are inexperienced or not as experienced, or someone that is in law enforcement that needs to understand how to push the pace a little bit and be in those situations that are a little bit more stressful, having these gloves that allow you to stay safe and protected, and again, put yourself in situations and emotionally, physically, mentally be in that situation presently as high of an intensity as you're able to train safely, these gloves allow you to do that without worry. So again, I recommend that all instructors carry these gloves. I usually carry a pair with me at all times in my bag whenever I'm at any gym, just in case we need to pop in and do some MMA training, whatever the case is. I can whip these out and utilize these. And again, anytime I'm doing self-defense training here at the house, these are my go-to MMA gloves now that I've used for everything. I've literally cleaned out all my other gloves that I've had in the house, and these are the only ones that I have sitting there. Again, we got multiple pairs for everybody to use, and we've had no issues with them, and it still allows us to push a pace. So from a training perspective, these are the top MMA gloves, in my opinion, on the market right now until I see otherwise. Again, they're a phenomenal price. They're not that expensive. You can check it out again in the link below, which will also give you a nice little discount. But honestly, give these a try. Try them out again, both with your training partners. Try them out in like a sports-based martial arts gym, and you can kind of see the difference on why people would use them differently. But again, if we're focusing strictly on self-defense, these gloves are sturdy. They maintain their frame and composure at all times. They have extra padding and resistance that protects you as well as protects your partner. But it allows you, which is the most important thing, it allows you to train your motions at no restrictions, as high of an intensity as you want to, which again, when you're training self-defense, you have to train at a level of intensity and mentality that will translate directly into the street. And again, I will only review products and push products that I feel will allow you to do that. If these gloves hindered any of that training in any way, shape, or form, I would not be using them today for our training. But again, because these gloves allow us to train the way that we are right now and it allows my students to feel comfortable if they were ever to get into a street altercation. I know that their training here has put them at a higher level mentally to where they are physically and mentally prepared to deal with certain situations because they've been able to train in those situations at a full pace, full throttle. Someone's coming at you, just grinding you through the grinder, and they're able to maintain control and do whatever they need to do. But again, that doesn't happen without the proper gear. And in regards to the gloves, this definitely doesn't. So Combat Corner, hats off to you. Again, everyone, check out the link below. Check them out. If you're looking for any sort of MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu based gear, they are the company to check out. Or again, if you're starting a self-defense gym or if you're a self-defense based school and you're still looking kind of for gloves to try out a little bit, this is probably my #1 glove on the market. Again, they come in 2 different colors, but they go fast. So get on it, order them today. But that's it. That's another product review for today. So give them a shot. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll see you next time.